3 months. Find a husband or lose everything. That's what they told her. What they didn't know was that the man she'd choose wasn't even looking. Before we start, hit like and drop your city below, because this story about a furniture maker and a CEO is going to challenge what you think you know about marriage, money, and who gets to make the rules. The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Clark Technologies' boardroom like accusations Jennifer couldn't escape. She stood at the head of the table, her Armani suit immaculate, her expression carved from ice, while 11 board members stared at her with varying degrees of contempt, pity, or calculation. The merger documents sat untouched in front of each seat, thick as phone books and worth $8 billion on paper. Margaret Anderson, the CFO, who'd been with the company since before Jennifer could drive, spoke with the gentle condescension usually reserved for children and incompetence. "The shareholders are nervous, Miss Clark. Your lifestyle choices have become a liability." Jennifer's fingers tightened around the presentation clicker. "My lifestyle choices have nothing to do with the fact that I've increased our market share by 18% in 2 years. Your personal life is our business when it affects stock prices." This came from Thomas Moore, her father's hand-picked corporate counsel, the man who'd taken her to 3 excruciating dinners and somehow thought they'd gone well. The press calls you untouchable. It's not exactly the image of stability James Robinson wants in a business partner. "I'm 32 years old." Jennifer's voice dropped to that dangerous quiet her employees had learned to fear. "I run a multinational cybersecurity firm. I don't need to be married to prove I'm stable." Actually, her father's voice cut through the room like a blade. "You do." Robert Clark emerged from the shadows near the window where he'd been watching the proceedings like a director observing his play. At 65, he still commanded every room he entered, silver-haired, steel-eyed, and absolutely ruthless in ways that had built an empire and destroyed a marriage. "The merger with Robinson Defense Systems is our biggest deal in a decade." He circled the table slowly, each footstep deliberate. "James Robinson is old-fashioned. Family values, legacy, stability. He's made it clear he prefers to do business with settled individuals, not corporate ice queens." Jennifer's laugh was sharp. "This isn't the 19th century, Father." "No, it's worse." He stopped directly across from her. "It's the 21st century where perception is everything and your image is hurting this company. So here's what's going to happen, Jennifer. You have 3 months to announce your engagement to someone suitable, someone who makes you look human instead of a corporate algorithm." The room went absolutely silent except for the rain and the distant hum of Manhattan traffic 60 floors below. "And if I refuse? Then the board will vote on your position as CEO." He glanced around the table and Jennifer saw the truth in their faces. They'd already discussed this, already made their decision. "I imagine you'll be offered a generous severance package and a seat on the board. Purely advisory, of course." Jennifer's throat tightened. This company was everything. Her mother had left when Jennifer was 8, simply walked out one morning and never came back, and her father had raised her in boardrooms and merger negotiations. She'd sacrificed relationships, friendships, every normal experience to prove herself worthy of the Clark name. She'd built this cybersecurity division from nothing, turned it into the most profitable arm of the company, and now they wanted to take it away because she wasn't married. 3 months. The words tasted like ashes. 3 months. Her father confirmed it with the finality of a judge passing sentence. Jennifer walked out of that boardroom with her spine straight and her face composed, took the elevator down to the parking garage, and sat in her Mercedes for 20 minutes while her hands shook on the steering wheel. Thomas Moore's face kept appearing in her mind. 46, twice divorced, with the personality of damp cardboard and the assumption that 3 mediocre dinners entitled him to her future. She could marry him, or someone like him. Another CEO, a hedge fund manager, someone from her father's carefully curated list of appropriate suitors. But they'd all want something: a board seat, access to her networks, leverage over her decisions. They'd see the marriage as an investment opportunity, another asset to manage and exploit. 2 weeks later, Jennifer sat in bumper-to-bumper traffic on Interstate 87, her knuckles white on the steering wheel, and wondered when her life had become a nightmare she couldn't buy her way out of. Her phone buzzed for the 14th time in an hour. She didn't need to look to know it was Thomas Moore, her father's chosen solution, calling to suggest another dinner where he'd explain his 5-year plan for their combined assets. The traffic lurched forward another foot, then stopped. Jennifer made a decision. She jerked the wheel right, cutting across 2 lanes to the shocked honking of other drivers, and took the exit marked Riverside, 15 miles. She had no idea where Riverside was, and she didn't care. She just needed to breathe, to think, to be anywhere but the suffocating grid of Manhattan where everyone knew her face and her failure. The highway gave way to country roads, then to something barely qualifying as pavement. Trees pressed in on both sides, their autumn leaves brilliant against an impossibly blue sky. Jennifer rolled down her window and let the wind mess her carefully styled hair. For the first time in weeks, her chest didn't feel like it was caving in. Then she remembered the furniture order. Her assistant had mentioned it last week, some custom pieces for the penthouse from a craftsman upstate. Jennifer had approved the purchase order without really looking at it, the way she approved dozens of transactions every day. But now she pulled up the email on her phone at a red light. Harris Custom Furniture, Riverside, New York. Delivery scheduled for next week, but client may visit workshop for approval. Jennifer made another impulsive decision and typed the address into her navigation. 20 minutes away. She'd go see the furniture, maybe talk to someone who had no idea who she was, maybe remember what it felt like to be treated like a person instead of a quarterly earnings report. The workshop appeared around a bend in the road, weathered wood siding with a hand-painted sign that read, Harris Custom Furniture, in letters that had faded but not peeled. The yard was full of pieces in various stages of completion. A rocking chair that looked like it belonged in a museum, a set of kitchen cabinets with intricate carved details, toys that were clearly made with actual skill rather than mass-produced in a factory. Through the open door she could hear the whine of a saw and a child's laughter. Jennifer hesitated with her hand on the car door. She'd never asked a stranger for help in her life. She'd never needed to. But her phone was buzzing again with Thomas Moore's number, and her father's ultimatum echoed in her head, and she was standing in the middle of nowhere in $1,000 shoes with no plan and no options. Pride at this point was a luxury she couldn't afford. David Harris was in the middle of cutting a mortise joint when he heard the car pull up. The engine was expensive, that purr that came from German engineering and regular maintenance. He killed the power on the saw and looked up, ready to greet Mrs. Patterson, who usually stopped by on Thursdays to check on her kitchen chair repair. Instead, he found himself staring at a woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine and gotten very, very lost. She was tall, maybe 5'9", with dark hair pulled back in a style that probably had a name he didn't know. Her suit was clearly expensive, though the hem was muddy and one heel looked damaged. But it was her face that caught him. Sharp cheekbones, gray eyes that assessed everything in a single glance, and an expression that suggested she was used to people jumping when she spoke. "Can I help you?" "My car's fine." Her voice was clipped, professional, with an edge of exhaustion she was trying to hide. "I'm looking for David Harris." "I'm the Clark estate order." David wiped sawdust off his work shirt and extended his hand. "That's me. You're early. I wasn't expecting delivery approval until next week." She shook his hand briefly, her grip firm. "I was in the area. Thought I'd check on the progress." It was a lie, and they both knew it. Nobody was just in the area of Riverside. "You had to be trying to get here. Had to want to be nowhere else first." "Sure." David gestured to the pieces lined up along the workshop wall. "The dresser's finished, just needs final sanding. The nightstands are assembled, working on the detail carving now. The desk frame is done. I'm sourcing the glass top from a supplier in Albany." She moved through the workshop with careful steps, her damaged heel clicking unevenly on the concrete floor. Her fingers traced the joinery on the dresser, the way the drawer faces lined up perfectly, the hand-rubbed finish that caught the light. "You do this all yourself?" "Most of it. I have a part-timer who helps with the heavy lifting, but the detail work is mine. It's beautiful." The admission seemed to surprise her. "I don't usually notice furniture, but this is actually beautiful." Emily chose that moment to burst through the workshop door. A whirlwind of 6-year-old energy with wild curls and paint-stained overalls. She skidded to a stop when she saw Jennifer, eyes going wide. "Who are you? Are you a princess? You look like a princess." "Emily." David's voice held a warning and an apology. "Remember what we said about personal questions? It's fine." Jennifer found herself smiling, an expression that felt foreign after 2 weeks of boardroom warfare. "I'm Jennifer, and no, not a princess. Just someone checking on furniture. Are you the one with the big apartment?" Emily climbed onto a workbench, swinging her legs. "Daddy showed me pictures. It's really, really tall. Like if you fell off the balcony, you'd fall for a whole minute before you hit the ground." "Emily." David's tone sharpened. "That's not— I don't think I'd fall for a whole minute." Jennifer leaned against the workbench, genuinely curious now. "Maybe 10 seconds? See, Daddy? I was close." For the next 20 minutes, Jennifer learned more about wood grain patterns and finish techniques than she'd ever imagined caring about. Emily was a force of nature, chattering non-stop, showing off the wooden horse her father had made her, asking questions faster than Jennifer could answer them. And David watched his daughter with such open affection that Jennifer felt something crack in her chest. This was what family looked like. Not board meetings and ultimatums, not strategic marriages and corporate alliances, just a father and daughter in a sunlit workshop sharing something real. "Emily, go wash up for lunch." David said it gently but firmly. "You've got paint everywhere. Can Jennifer stay for lunch?" Emily turned those enormous green eyes on her father, a weapon she clearly knew how to deploy. "Please? We never have fancy company. I'm sure Jennifer has somewhere to be." Actually, the word came out before Jennifer could stop it. "I'd love to stay if that's all right." David looked surprised, but he nodded. "Sure. Fair warning, though, lunch is probably just sandwiches." "Sandwiches sound perfect." The apartment above the workshop was small and cluttered in a way that made Jennifer's minimalist penthouse feel sterile by comparison. There were toys scattered across the floor, artwork taped to the walls, dishes in the sink, and a general sense of lived-in chaos that should have made her uncomfortable but somehow didn't. Over sandwiches that were, as promised, simple but good, Jennifer learned more about David Harris. He'd been a carpenter for 15 years, specializing in custom furniture and restoration work. His wife Sarah had died 3 years ago, something about complications from lupus that he didn't elaborate on. He was raising Emily alone, trying to make ends meet while keeping his business afloat. He didn't say it directly, but Jennifer was good at reading between lines. Money was tight. Very tight. "What about you?" David asked, passing Emily more chips. "What do you do in Manhattan?" "I run a company." Or I did. Jennifer surprised herself with the honesty. "It's complicated. Daddy runs a company too," Emily announced proudly through a mouthful of sandwich. "Harris Custom Furniture. We make the best toys in the whole world, I can see that." Jennifer gestured to the wooden horse Emily had set carefully on the table. "You're very talented. Daddy made it. He makes everything. He's magic." David's ears turned red. "It's just woodworking, sweetheart." But Jennifer saw the pride in his work, the precision in every joint and curve. This wasn't just carpentry. This was artistry born from patience and skill and giving a damn about the final product. "Can I ask you something?" Jennifer set down her sandwich. "How do you do it? Run a business, raise a child alone, and still seem happy?" David's smile was tired. "We're a team. We look out for each other. That's enough. That's enough." Jennifer thought about her penthouse with its 16 rooms and 0 love, her closet full of designer clothes she wore to impress people she didn't like, her calendar crammed with obligations and empty of joy. When was the last time anything had been enough? Before she could spiral further, David's phone rang. He checked the screen and his expression changed, the easy warmth draining out of his face like someone had pulled a plug. "I need to take this. It's the hospital." He stepped into the other room, but Jennifer could hear his voice drop low, urgent. Emily kept chattering about her school and her best friend Maya and the upcoming fall festival, apparently unaware that anything was wrong. When David came back 5 minutes later, his face was pale. "Emily, go play in your room for a bit, okay? But we're still eating." "Now, sweetheart." Something in his tone made Emily obey without arguing. When she was gone, David slumped into a chair and dragged his hands through his hair. Jennifer saw real fear in his eyes, the kind that came from loving something more than your own life and knowing you might lose it. "Everything okay?" "Not really." He looked at her and seemed to make a decision. "Emily has a heart condition, congenital defect, VSD. She needs surgery, but it's not covered by our insurance. The hospital just called. They want to move it up, do it in 4 months instead of next year." "How much?" "The surgery? About $285,000. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Might as well be $3 million. I've been saving everything I can, but I'm not even close. What about loans? Payment plans? I own this building outright, but it's not worth much. I've got maybe $38,000 in savings after I cleared some other debts. I've picked up every job I can find, but—" He shook his head, and Jennifer saw a man who'd been fighting a losing battle with math for months, maybe years. They sat in silence. Through the wall, Jennifer could hear Emily humming as she played, completely unaware that her whole future hung in the balance of numbers her father couldn't make work. Then, before she could talk herself out of it, Jennifer spoke. "What if I could help?" David looked up sharply. "What?" "What if I paid for Emily's surgery? Covered all the costs, no strings attached?" "Jennifer." His tone was careful now, wary. I can't accept charity, especially not from someone I just met. It's not charity." Her heart was pounding, but her voice stayed steady. This was insane, reckless, possibly the stupidest idea she'd ever had. But watching David with Emily, seeing the love and desperation in his eyes, had cracked something open in her chest. And suddenly she saw a solution to both their problems. It would be a business arrangement. She continued before he could interrupt. "You need money for your daughter's surgery. I need a husband." The words hung in the air between them like something fragile and dangerous. "I'm sorry, what?" Jennifer took a breath and made her pitch, the thing she was very, very good at. "I need to be married within 3 months or I lose my company. You need money to save your daughter's life. So here's my proposal. We get married. A contract marriage, 1 year. You play the role of my husband for public appearances, family events, whatever's necessary. In exchange, I pay for Emily's surgery, clear any debts you have, and provide a comfortable stipend for living expenses." "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious." She met his eyes. "I know this sounds crazy, but you said you're out of options." "Well, so am I. This could solve both our problems." David stood up and paced to the window, his shoulders tight. "You want to pay me to marry you? I want to hire you for a role. Think of it as a year-long acting job with excellent benefits. This is insane." "Yes," Jennifer agreed. "It is. But is it more insane than letting your daughter's surgery get delayed because you can't afford it? Than watching her get sicker while you exhaust yourself trying to scrape together money that might not come in time?" It was a low blow, and they both knew it. But David didn't argue because the truth was sitting right there between them, ugly and undeniable. 1 year. He said it finally, still staring out the window. 1 year, then we divorce quietly. You'll have enough money to secure Emily's future, maybe expand your business. I'll have satisfied the board's requirements and kept my company. We both get what we need. And we just what? Live together? Pretend to be in love? We live separately. You stay here, I stay in Manhattan. We see each other for scheduled appearances. Very civilized, very professional." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. Though it might be easier to sell the story if Emily came to some events. The press loves that sort of thing. Successful businesswoman bonding with stepdaughter, but only if you're comfortable with it. David turned to face her. "Why me? You could marry anyone, someone from your world. Because everyone in my world wants something from me. Power, connections, money, leverage. You're the first person I've met in years who doesn't know who I am and doesn't care." She stood up, meeting his gaze. "And because I watched you with Emily, and I saw something real, something I haven't seen in a very long time. This is crazy." David said it again, but there was something shifting in his expression, the look of a man doing math in his head and not liking the answer but seeing no other solution. "Probably. So what do you say?" He looked toward Emily's room where his daughter was still humming happily, unaware that her whole future hung in the balance of her father's next words. "I need to think about it." "Of course. Take the night. I'll get a hotel. The nearest hotel is 40 miles away. Remember?" A wry smile tugged at his mouth despite everything. "You can take the couch. We'll talk in the morning." That night, Jennifer lay on David Harris's couch under a quilt that smelled like lavender and wood smoke and stared at the ceiling. This was insane. She was proposing a fake marriage to a stranger. She'd known him for less than 8 hours, but she kept thinking about the deadline. 3 months. Find someone or lose everything. And she kept thinking about Emily's bright eyes and David's desperate hope when she'd offered to help. Maybe this could work. Maybe they could both get what they needed. From the bedroom she heard David's quiet footsteps, the creak of floorboards as he checked on his daughter, the gentle sounds of a bedtime routine she'd never experienced herself. Jennifer pulled the quilt tighter and closed her eyes. Tomorrow David would give her his answer, and one way or another, her life would never be the same. In the bedroom, David sat on the edge of Emily's bed and watched his daughter sleep. $285,000. A year of his life. A fake marriage to a woman who lived in a different universe. It was insane. But Emily's next cardiology appointment was in 2 weeks, and he already knew what Dr. Williams would say. Her condition was getting worse. The surgery couldn't wait much longer. He thought about the contracts he'd lost last month when the textile mill closed, the jobs he'd bid on and lost to cheaper competition from bigger firms, the savings account that never seemed to grow fast enough no matter how many hours he worked or how many shifts he picked up at the warehouse. He thought about Sarah and what she would say. She'd probably laugh at the absurdity of it all, then tell him to do whatever it took to protect their daughter. David looked at Emily's peaceful face, her chest rising and falling with each breath, and felt his own chest tighten with a love so fierce it was almost painful. 1 year of pretending, 1 year of playing a role for her whole life ahead of her, healthy and strong. He already knew his answer. He just had to figure out how to tell Jennifer Clark that she'd just hired herself a husband. Morning came too quickly and not quickly enough. Jennifer woke to the smell of coffee and something sweet baking, completely disoriented until she remembered where she was. David Harris's couch, Riverside, a marriage proposal that seemed even more insane in the clear light of dawn. She sat up, wincing as her back protested the unfamiliar sleeping arrangement. Through the window she could see the workshop yard bathed in golden October light, and she could hear voices from the kitchen. David's low rumble and Emily's bright chatter mixing with the sound of a spatula scraping against a pan. "But why can't I have chocolate chips for breakfast?" "Because chocolate chips aren't breakfast food, sweetheart. That's why we put them in pancakes." "That's basically the same thing, Daddy." Jennifer found herself smiling despite her nerves. She folded the quilt carefully, smoothed her hopelessly wrinkled suit, and walked into the kitchen. David looked up from the stove, spatula in hand, and their eyes met. In that single glance, she knew he was going to say yes. "Morning. Coffee's fresh. Pancakes are almost ready." "Jennifer." Emily bounced over, her braid from yesterday now loose and wild. "Are you staying forever?" "Daddy said you might stay for a while." "Emily, eat your breakfast." David's voice held a warning and an apology, but Jennifer caught the tension in his shoulders. They needed to talk alone. Breakfast was surprisingly pleasant despite the elephant in the room. Emily dominated the conversation with stories about her friend Maya, and whether pumpkins could really turn into carriages like in the movies. David listened with patient attention, while Jennifer found herself drawn into the easy rhythm of their morning routine. This could be her life. For a year, anyway. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it felt almost appealing. When Emily finally ran off to brush her teeth, David poured them both more coffee and sat down across from Jennifer. "I thought about your offer all night." He said it without preamble. "And I have questions." "Of course. But first, why? I mean, I understand you need to be married for your company, but why not marry someone from your social circle? Someone who already knows the rules of your world?" Jennifer wrapped her hands around her mug. "Because everyone in my world comes with agendas and expectations. They'd see this marriage as an opportunity for leverage. You need what I'm offering. Money for Emily's surgery. That's clean, simple, no hidden motives. Except I'd be lying to my daughter. Not lying, just not explaining every detail. Jennifer leaned forward. David, we'd tell Emily that we're getting married. That's true. We tell her that sometimes adults make practical decisions. Also true. We just don't specify the timeline or the contract. She's 6. She doesn't need to know everything. She'll get attached. Maybe. But she'll also have a healthy heart and a secure future. Jennifer held his gaze. I'm not pretending this is perfect. But is it worse than the alternative? David was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming against his coffee mug in a rhythm that matched his thinking. What about the logistics? You said we'd live separately, but Emily would be involved in appearances. How does that work? I'll maintain my penthouse in Manhattan. You and Emily stay here. For events, galas, family dinners, public appearances, I'll arrange transportation. We'll coordinate schedules in advance. Everything professional and planned. And your family? They're just going to accept that you married a small-town carpenter? Jennifer's smile was sharp. My father wants me married to prove I'm stable. He didn't specify the pedigree. And honestly, he'll probably hate it, which is a bonus. You don't get along with your father. That's putting it mildly. She glanced toward the bathroom where Emily was singing off-key while brushing her teeth. He sees people as assets or liabilities. Nothing in between. I spent my whole life trying to be the perfect asset, and it was never enough. David studied her face with an intensity that made her want to look away. This marriage, it's not just about saving your company, is it? It's about proving something to him. Maybe. Jennifer didn't like how easily he read her. Does that change your answer? No. He set down his mug with a decisive clink. Because I'm not doing this for your family drama. I'm doing this for Emily. So here are my conditions. Jennifer straightened. She was back in familiar territory now. Negotiations. First, David's voice was firm. Emily's well-being comes before everything. Any appearance, any event, any obligation, if it conflicts with what's best for her, we don't do it. Agreed. Second, no lies about our relationship to the press or public. We're married, we're making it work, but we don't manufacture some fake love story. I won't play that game. That's actually better, Jennifer said. The press loves an unconventional couple. The quiet carpenter and the CEO. It's already a story. Third, after the year is up, we go our separate ways cleanly. No drama, no recriminations. We co-parent Emily's relationship with you if she wants to maintain contact, but otherwise we're done. Something twinged in Jennifer's chest at that, but she nodded. Of course. And fourth. David paused, his eyes locked on hers. I want it in writing. Every term, every obligation, every financial arrangement. I'm not naive enough to trust a handshake deal worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'll have my lawyer draw up a contract today. Not your lawyer. A neutral third party. Someone who represents both our interests. Jennifer couldn't help but smile. You're smarter than you look. I'm a small-town carpenter, not an idiot. But his tone was light, almost teasing. So, Jennifer Clark. He extended his hand across the table. Do we have a deal? She took his hand. His palm was warm and calloused, the hand of someone who built things with care and precision. We have a deal, David Harris. This was really happening. She was hiring a husband. When do you want to do this? David asked, not letting go of her hand yet. As soon as possible. I need to introduce you to my father and the board within the month. The wedding itself can be small. We'll say we wanted something intimate. Emily's going to want a real wedding. David's expression softened. Flowers and cake and a princess dress? Jennifer hadn't thought of that. In her world, weddings were orchestrated events with guest lists and political considerations. But Emily would see it through a 6-year-old's eyes. Magic and fairy tales and happily ever after. Then we'll give her one, Jennifer said. Within reason. David smiled, and it transformed his whole face. You're going to be terrible at the within reason part, aren't you? Probably. Before they could discuss further, Emily burst back into the kitchen, toothbrush still in hand. Are you two done talking about boring adult stuff? Because Maya's mom said I could come over and we're going to make leaf crowns. Emily, you're still in your pajamas. I'll get dressed super fast. Can I go, Daddy, please? David checked his watch. Fine. but you need to be ready in 10 minutes. Emily squealed and ran for her room, leaving Jennifer and David alone again, with the weight of what they'd just agreed to settling between them like something solid and real and terrifying. "I should call my lawyer," Jennifer said. "Get the contract process started, and I should open the shop. I have 3 orders due this week." David stood, then hesitated. "Jennifer, thank you. For Emily. Whatever else happens, I won't forget that you're helping her." "Don't thank me yet," Jennifer said quietly. "You haven't met my father." The statement hung between them like a warning neither was quite ready to unpack. Have you ever had to prove yourself in a world designed to make you feel small? What those boardroom executives didn't understand was that David Harris had been proving himself his entire life. This was just another test, except this time, his daughter's life hung in the balance. Within hours, Jennifer's lawyer arrived from Manhattan with a briefcase full of documents and barely concealed shock. Angela Martinez was a black woman in her 50s who'd built her practice on protecting people who couldn't protect themselves, and she took one look at David's workshop and seemed to understand exactly what was happening. "Let me be clear about something, Mr. Harris." Angela spread the contract across David's kitchen table while Jennifer waited in the workshop below. "I don't work for Jennifer Clark. I work for Fair Deals, so I'm going to make sure this protects you as much as it protects her." David appreciated the directness. "What am I missing?" Angela flipped to page 7. The financial section looks clean. Surgery costs, debt coverage, monthly stipend. But we need to add healthcare continuation for Emily beyond the contract term. What happens if she needs follow-up procedures in year 2? They spent the next 3 hours going through every clause. Angela caught things David wouldn't have thought to question. Custody arrangements if something happened to David during the contract year, Jennifer's obligations if the company went under, exit clauses that protected Emily's relationship with Jennifer after the divorce. By the time they finished, the contract was 26 pages instead of 18. When David came down to the workshop to review the final version with Jennifer, Angela followed. "One more thing." Angela's tone shifted, quieter now. "Mr. Harris, you're a black man entering a predominantly white social circle with a contract that could be misinterpreted as transactional. I've added language that frames this as a mutual business partnership, not an employment arrangement. It matters how this reads if it ever becomes public." "You think it will?" Angela looked at Jennifer. "Do you plan to keep this secret from everyone?" "Just the specifics." Jennifer's voice was measured. "People will know we're married. They don't need to know the terms." "Then yes." Angela turned back to David. "It will probably become public, so we make sure when it does, you're protected." David signed on page 24. Jennifer signed on page 25. Angela witnessed on page 26. Just like that, David Harris had a wife. The next week passed in a blur of arrangements that felt surreal. Jennifer returned to Manhattan long enough to pack clothes and inform her assistant that yes, she was getting married, and no, there would be no engagement party. She fielded 17 calls from her father and ignored all of them, sending him a single text instead. "Found someone. You'll meet him Friday." Friday arrived with the weight of an execution date. David drove to Manhattan in his 15-year-old Ford that had seen better days, with Emily buckled in the back seat singing along to Disney songs she'd memorized from countless viewings. Jennifer had offered to send a car service, but David had refused. He was already compromising enough. He wasn't showing up to meet her father in a hired limousine like some kind of escort service. Jennifer met them in the lobby of Clark Tower, a gleaming monument to corporate power that stretched 60 stories into the Manhattan skyline. She watched through the windows as David's truck pulled up to valet parking, looking absurdly out of place among the Teslas and Mercedes. This was a mistake. Her father would eviscerate David in minutes. Then David climbed out, lifted Emily down, and straightened his tie, the only concession he'd made to the formality of the meeting. His jaw was set, his shoulders squared, and Jennifer realized he wasn't going to pretend to be something he wasn't. And somehow that was exactly what she needed. Wow. Emily breathed as they entered the lobby, 60 feet of marble and glass and money. "Is this where you work?" "It's like a castle." "Sort of." Jennifer found herself crouching to Emily's level, something she'd never done with any child before. Pretty fancy, right? It's really tall. Emily tilted her head back to stare at the ceiling. Don't you get scared you'll fall off? I try not to think about it. That's smart. My daddy says if you think about bad stuff too much, it makes you worried, and then you can't sleep, and then you're grumpy. Your daddy sounds wise. He is. Emily said it with absolute conviction. He's the wisest person I know. Well, him and Miss Patterson at the store who gives me free candy sometimes. David's hand settled on Emily's shoulder. Come on, Em. Miss Clark's father is waiting. The elevator ride took 45 seconds and felt like 40 years. Emily pressed her nose to the glass, watching the city drop away below them, while David stood very still beside Jennifer, his breathing controlled, but his hands clenched at his sides. You okay? I'm about to meet a billionaire who thinks I'm marrying his daughter. David's voice was barely above a whisper. So no, not really. Just be yourself. He'll hate that, but he hates everything. Very reassuring. The elevator doors opened directly into the executive suite. Robert Clark's assistant looked up from her desk and did a visible double-take at David and Emily. Her fingers hesitated over her keyboard, uncertainty flickering across her professionally neutral expression. Miss Clark, your father is waiting. He said to send you in immediately. Thank you, Margaret. Jennifer turned to David. Ready? No, but let's do this anyway. They walked into Robert Clark's office together, and Jennifer saw her father's face cycle through several expressions in rapid succession: surprise at the interruption, confusion at David's presence, and then something colder settling into place when he registered Emily's hand in David's. Jennifer. Robert stood from behind his massive mahogany desk. You said you were bringing your fiancée. Not... He trailed off, his gaze traveling over David's off-the-rack suit and working man's hands before landing on Emily, who was staring at the floor-to-ceiling windows with undisguised wonder. Father, this is David Harris, my fiancé, and his daughter Emily. Jennifer's voice could have frozen nitrogen. David, this is my father, Robert Clark. David extended his hand without hesitation. Mr. Clark, nice to meet you. Robert stared at the offered hand like it might contaminate him, but decades of social conditioning won out. He shook briefly, his grip perfunctory, then immediately released and reached for a handkerchief to wipe his palm. Harris. Robert's tone made it sound like a question he was already certain had the wrong answer. What do you do, Mr. Harris? I'm a carpenter. Own a woodworking business in Riverside. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. A carpenter. My daughter, the CEO of a cybersecurity firm, is marrying a carpenter. Yes, sir. And you have a child? Yes, sir. Emily is 6. Robert's gaze shifted to Jennifer, and she saw real anger there, the kind that came from feeling ambushed and outmaneuvered. We need to speak privately. Anything you want to say, you can say in front of David. I don't think that's wise, and I don't care what you think is wise. Jennifer's voice stayed wrapped in professional courtesy, but the steel underneath was unmistakable. You gave me 3 months to find someone suitable. I found someone. David is kind, hardworking, and genuine, qualities that seem to be in short supply in our social circle. He's a carpenter from nowhere with a child and presumably no money. Robert's words came faster now, control slipping. You can't seriously expect... Mr. Clark. David's voice cut through the rising tension, quiet but absolute. I understand this isn't what you expected. I understand that from where you're standing I look like someone taking advantage of your daughter. That's not what's happening. That's putting it mildly. But Jennifer and I have an understanding. We know what we're getting into. David's posture didn't shift, but something in his tone hardened. And whether you approve or not, we're getting married. Emily, who'd been uncharacteristically quiet while processing the adult tension crackling through the room, chose that moment to pipe up. Are you really Jennifer's daddy? Because you seem kind of mean. The office went absolutely silent except for the hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of Manhattan traffic. Jennifer bit the inside of her cheek to keep from laughing. David looked mortified, and Robert Clark stared at the 6-year-old who'd just called him mean with an expression that suggested no one had spoken to him like that in his entire adult life. Emily. David's voice held a warning. That's not polite. But it's true. Emily was undeterred by the adult disapproval. He hasn't smiled once, and he's looking at Jennifer like she did something bad. She didn't do anything bad. She's really nice. She braided my hair and stayed for lunch, and she doesn't even mind that our house is small. Despite everything, despite the corporate warfare and the impossible situation and the fact that his entire future rested on the whim of this cold-eyed billionaire, David felt warmth bloom in his chest. This ridiculous, wonderful child was defending Jennifer Clark to one of the most powerful men in New York without a trace of fear. Robert seemed to be struggling with how to respond to brutal honesty delivered by a 6-year-old. Finally, he turned back to Jennifer, visibly recalibrating his approach. "This is absurd. You're making a mockery of—" "I'm fulfilling the terms you set." Jennifer cut him off cleanly. "You wanted me married within 3 months to someone who makes me look stable. David is stable. He's a business owner, a father, a respected member of his community. He checks every box you specified." "I specified someone from our world." "No, you didn't. You said someone suitable." "Well, I found someone suitable for me." Father and daughter stared at each other across the desk, and David could practically see the decades of conflict crackling between them. This wasn't just about a marriage arrangement. This was about power and control and a daughter who'd spent her whole life trying to please a father who couldn't be pleased. "When's the wedding?" Robert asked finally, his tone clipped. 3 weeks. Small ceremony, immediate family only. The board will want to meet him first. Then arrange it. But make it quick. We have a lot to plan." Robert looked at David again, and this time his expression was calculating rather than dismissive. "Mr. Harris, could you give us a moment? Margaret will show you and your daughter to the conference room. There's coffee, and I believe we have some cookies." David looked at Jennifer, who nodded slightly. He took Emily's hand and left. Though Jennifer could see the tension in his shoulders as he went, the way he kept Emily close like he was protecting her from something he couldn't quite name. The moment the door closed, Robert erupted. "What the hell are you thinking? A carpenter with a child?" "Jennifer, this is career suicide. This is survival," she shot back. "You backed me into a corner, so I found a way out. You don't get to complain about the solution when you created the problem." "I created the problem?" "You created it by refusing to settle down like a normal person. By insisting—" "By normal you mean marry some corporate clone who sees me as a stepping stone to your fortune? No, thank you." Robert paced to the window, hands clasped behind his back in the pose he always adopted when he was trying to regain control of a situation slipping away from him. "The board won't accept this. The board will accept what you tell them to accept." Jennifer's voice was ice over steel. "You still control 40% of the voting shares. And if I refuse to support this marriage?" Jennifer smiled, but there was nothing warm in it. "Then you lose me entirely. I'll marry David anyway, resign from Clark Technologies, and start my own company. I have contacts, capital, and enough industry knowledge to compete directly with you. Is that really what you want?" It was mostly a bluff, mostly, but Robert didn't need to know that. He turned back to her, and for the first time she saw something like grudging respect in his eyes. "You've thought this through. Did you expect anything less?" "You trained me, Father. Every ruthless tactic I know, I learned from you. He's going to hurt you." Robert's tone shifted, something almost like concern bleeding through the anger. "People like that always want something." "People like what?" David was working class, black, from somewhere Robert had never heard of. The unspoken prejudices hung in the air between them like smoke. Working class people? Good fathers? Or just people who aren't you? The barb hit home. Robert flinched, barely visible but there. "What does he want?" Robert asked quietly, all the bluster gone. "There's always something. Medical care for his daughter. That's it. That's never it." "Well, this time it is." Jennifer moved toward the door. "The wedding is in 3 weeks. You can either show up and play the supportive father, or you can stay away. Either way, it's happening." She reached for the handle, then paused. "And father? David is a good man, better than most of the people in your precious social circle. You might try actually talking to him instead of dismissing him." She left before he could respond. In the conference room, she found David and Emily at the massive table. Emily had discovered the cookies and was happily munching while David nursed a cup of coffee and looked like he wanted to bolt. "How bad?" His question was quiet, pitched for her ears only. About what I expected. He's furious, but he'll fall in line. He hates me. He hates everyone. Don't take it personally. These cookies are really good, Emily announced through a mouthful of chocolate chip. Way better than the ones at home. Can we bring some back? David and Jennifer exchanged glances over Emily's head, and despite everything they both smiled. Sure, Jennifer said, surprising herself with how natural it felt. We'll bring some back. The drive home was quiet. Emily fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from the excitement and the sugar crash. David drove with careful attention to the road while Jennifer watched the city give way to suburbs, give way to country. Thank you. The words came out quieter than she'd intended. For standing up to my father. I didn't do it for you. David's eyes stayed on the road. I did it because he was being an ass. Still, most people are terrified of him. I'm terrified of lots of things. David's jaw tightened. Angry billionaires just aren't high on the list. They drove in silence for a while longer, the landscape darkening as the sun set behind the hills. Then David spoke again, softer this time. Emily defended you today, in front of your father. I noticed. She doesn't do that for just anyone. She's already attached to you. Is that a problem? I don't know yet. David's fingers drummed against the steering wheel. When this is over, when the year is up, she's going to be hurt. She's 6. She won't understand why you're leaving. We'll explain it carefully. Make sure she knows it's not her fault. Kids don't work like that. You can't logic away their feelings. Jennifer looked out of the window at the darkening landscape. I know. But what's the alternative? Not go through with this? Let her miss the surgery she needs? No, you're right. This is the best option we have. David's voice was heavy. It doesn't mean it won't hurt later. The truth of it settled between them like a third passenger they'd both been trying to ignore. They were making a choice that would help Emily now but potentially harm her later. And there was no way around that paradox. The wedding took place on a Saturday afternoon in late October when the trees were ablaze with color and the air carried that perfect autumn crispness that made everything feel possible. Jennifer had kept her promise. It was small, but it was nice. More than nice, actually. It was almost perfect, which terrified her more than any board meeting ever had. They'd chosen a small estate outside the city, a historic property with gardens that looked like they belonged in storybooks. Jennifer had hired a wedding planner who specialized in intimate ceremonies, and the woman had worked miracles with the 3-week timeline. White roses and ivy draped the arbor where they'd exchange vows. String lights waited to illuminate the evening reception. A small string quartet played classical pieces that drifted across the grounds like something from another century. There were exactly 32 guests. David's side included his brother Michael, who'd driven up from Pennsylvania with his wife and 3 kids, a few close friends from Riverside, and Mrs. Patterson from the general store who'd known David since he was a boy and had very strong opinions about proper wedding cakes. Jennifer's side was sparse by comparison. Her father, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. 3 board members who'd made the trip out of obligation rather than affection. Angela Martinez, who'd become something close to a friend during the contract negotiations. And, surprisingly, Thomas Moore, the lawyer her father had tried to set her up with, who showed up with a date and a forced smile that didn't reach his eyes. Emily, of course, insisted on the biggest princess dress she could find and currently twirled in the bridal suite, making the tulle skirt float around her like a cloud. Do I look like Elsa? You look better than Elsa. Jennifer adjusted Emily's flower crown for the 3rd time. That's beautiful, and you look like a queen. Emily studied Jennifer's reflection with the serious intensity of someone half her age. Are you scared? What makes you think I'm scared? You keep touching your necklace. Daddy does that with his watch when he's nervous. Jennifer forced her hand down from the pearl necklace that had belonged to her mother. I'm not scared, just thinking. About what? About how this whole arrangement was supposed to be simple and transactional and completely under control. And instead she was standing in a bridal suite with a 6-year-old who looked at her like she hung the moon, about to marry a man she'd known for less than a month. And nothing about any of it felt simple anymore. about how lucky your dad is to have you." "I know." Emily grinned without a trace of false modesty. "I'm the best." A knock on the door interrupted them. Angela poked her head in, her expression carefully neutral. "It's time. David's already at the arbor." "You ready?" "No. Absolutely not." This was insane. Ready. The walk to the ceremony felt both endless and too short. Emily skipped ahead, scattering rose petals with wild enthusiasm that had nothing to do with the careful pattern the wedding planner had demonstrated. Jennifer followed, her heels sinking slightly into the grass, and tried to remember how to breathe. Then she saw David waiting at the arbor and something in her chest settled. He'd cleaned up well. Not a designer tux, he'd refused that, but a well-tailored dark suit that fit his frame perfectly. His hair was neatly trimmed, his shoes polished, and when he saw her walking toward him, his expression shifted from nervous to something softer. This was an act, Jennifer reminded herself, a performance for the guests. David was good at playing his role, but when she reached him and he took her hand, his palm was sweating just like hers was, and she realized he was just as terrified as she was. "You look beautiful." The words were quiet enough that only she could hear. "You clean up nicely yourself." "Emily insisted I use cologne. I smell like a department store. You smell fine." They were stalling, both of them, and the officiant, a kind-faced woman who'd agreed to perform a secular ceremony, cleared her throat gently. "Shall we begin?" The ceremony itself was short. No religious elements, no lengthy sermons about love and commitment, just simple vows that Jennifer and David had written themselves, focusing on partnership and respect and supporting each other through the year ahead. The words were carefully chosen to be honest without revealing the contract underneath. "I promise to be your partner in all things." Jennifer's voice stayed steady despite the chaos in her chest. "To respect your choices and support your dreams. To care for you and Emily with everything I have." David's vows were simpler. "I promise to stand beside you even when it's hard. To be honest even when the truth is uncomfortable. To build something real out of this chance we're taking together. Build something real." The words hit Jennifer harder than they should have. This wasn't supposed to be real. This was business. But when David slipped the wedding band onto her finger, white gold, simple and elegant, and she did the same for him, it felt real, terrifyingly, impossibly real, by the power vested in me. The officiant smiled warmly. "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." They'd discussed this part. A brief kiss, nothing dramatic, professional and appropriate for an arranged marriage that would end in 12 months. But when David leaned in and pressed his lips to hers, something sparked between them that had nothing to do with contracts or performances. It lasted maybe 3 seconds, but in those 3 seconds Jennifer forgot about the guests and the arrangement and every careful wall she'd built around herself. When they pulled apart, David looked as shaken as she felt. "Well," his voice was rough. "Yeah." They didn't get to finish the thought because Emily crashed into them both, wrapping her arms around their legs in a hug that nearly toppled them over. "You're married. You're really married. Does this mean Jennifer is my mom now?" David and Jennifer exchanged panicked glances over her head. "It means Jennifer is part of our family now," David said carefully, crouching to Emily's level. "We'll figure out the details as we go." "Okay." Emily seemed satisfied with that answer. She grabbed both their hands and pulled them toward the reception area. "Come on, Mrs. Patterson said there's cake with 4 layers." The reception was held in a garden pavilion strung with lights that glowed like fireflies as the sun set. Dinner was served at a single long table where all 32 guests sat together, creating an atmosphere that was more family gathering than formal wedding. The food was excellent. David had insisted on comfort food over haute cuisine, so they had roasted chicken and autumn vegetables and fresh bread that filled the pavilion with warmth. Jennifer found herself seated between David and his brother Michael, who'd spent most of the ceremony looking at her like she was an alien species. "So," Michael took a long drink of wine. "You really run a cybersecurity firm." "I really do." "And you married my little brother the carpenter." "I really did." Michael took another drink. "David said you two met when you came to check on a furniture order." That's right. And you just decided to get married. Just like that. Michael. David's tone held a warning. Don't interrogate my wife at our wedding reception. I'm not interrogating. I'm trying to understand how my brother, who hasn't dated anyone since Sarah died, suddenly shows up married to... He stopped himself, but the implications hung in the air. Married to someone from a completely different world. Someone white and wealthy and so far outside their experience that the whole thing felt like a fever dream. To someone who saw something in him worth committing to. Jennifer finished quietly. Even if the commitment had a timeline and an exit clause she wasn't about to mention. Michael studied her for a long moment, then looked at David, then back to Jennifer. You know he's broke, right? Like actually broke. Not rich people pretending to struggle broke, I'm aware. And you're okay with that? Your brother has something money can't buy. Jennifer met Michael's skeptical gaze directly. Integrity. Most people in my world would sell that for the right price. David won't. Michael's expression softened slightly. Well then, he raised his glass. Welcome to the family, Jennifer. We're a mess, but we're honest about it. They clinked glasses, and Jennifer felt something loosen in her chest. At least someone in David's family understood, even if they didn't necessarily approve. Across the table, Robert Clark watched the interaction with cold calculation. He'd barely spoken to anyone all evening, choosing instead to observe like he was gathering intelligence for a hostile takeover. When the meal finished and people began mingling, Robert approached Jennifer with the precision of someone executing a battle plan. We need to talk. We're at my wedding reception, Father. Can it wait? No. He guided her away from the pavilion toward a quieter section of the garden where the laughter and music faded to background noise. Jennifer glanced back once and saw David watching them, his expression concerned, but she shook her head slightly. She could handle her father. When they were alone, Robert turned to face her. I had him investigated. Of course you did. He's exactly what he appears to be. Small-town carpenter, widowed 3 years ago. Daughter with a congenital heart defect requiring surgery he can't afford. No criminal record. No debts beyond normal business operations. No scandals. Robert's tone suggested this lack of dirt was somehow suspicious in itself. Did you expect to find something? I expected to find an angle. Everyone has one. Maybe David doesn't. Robert laughed, but there was no humor in it. Everyone has an angle, Jennifer. His is obvious. He needs money for his daughter. What I can't figure out is yours. I told you I needed to be married. You could have married Thomas Moore or James Robinson's nephew or any of a dozen suitable men who would have strengthened the company's position. Instead, you married a nobody from nowhere. Jennifer's temper flared. David is not a nobody. He's a skilled craftsman, a devoted father, and a decent human being. Those qualities seem to be in short supply in your world. My world? It's your world too, Jennifer. You were born into it, raised in it, trained to lead it, and now you're throwing it away for what? A carpenter who makes toy horses? I'm not throwing anything away. I'm fulfilling the terms you set. I'm married. The board is satisfied. The merger with Robinson Defense can proceed. You got what you wanted. What I wanted was for you to take this seriously, to understand that your position requires sacrifice and strategy, not this. He gestured back toward the pavilion where laughter drifted through the evening air. This is sacrifice. Jennifer's voice dropped to something quiet and dangerous. More than you know. Robert studied her face. You care about him. The carpenter. I respect him. That's not what I said. Jennifer looked away. It doesn't matter what I feel. This is a business arrangement, just like every other decision I've made in service to this company. In a year it will be over and everything will go back to normal. Will it? Robert's voice was sharp. Because from where I'm standing, you look at him the same way your mother used to look at me. Before I destroyed that too. The admission hung between them like something fragile and dangerous. In 32 years, Robert had never once mentioned destroying his marriage. He'd never acknowledged that his relentless ambition had cost him the only person who genuinely loved him. I'm not you, Jennifer said. And David isn't Mom. We have an agreement. Clear terms. An expiration date. It's clean. Nothing involving actual human beings is ever clean, Jennifer. You should know that by now. He walked away before she could respond, leaving her alone in the garden with truths she didn't want to examine too closely. When Jennifer returned to the pavilion, the party had shifted into celebration mode. The string quartet had been replaced by a DJ playing music that had Emily and several of David's friends' children dancing enthusiastically. The cake had been cut, 4 layers of chocolate and vanilla with buttercream frosting that Emily had declared the best thing ever, and champagne flowed freely among the adults. David found her immediately, appearing at her elbow with a glass of wine and a concerned expression. "You okay? You were gone a while. My father wanted to share his thoughts on our marriage." "Let me guess. Not impressed. That's putting it mildly." Jennifer took the wine gratefully. "He had you investigated." David's jaw tightened. "Of course he did. Find anything interesting?" "Just that you're exactly who you say you are." He seemed disappointed. "Sorry to be so boring." They stood together watching Emily teach Mrs. Patterson some complicated dance move that involved a lot of spinning, and both of them were laughing so hard they could barely stand. "She's having the time of her life." David's voice was soft. "She is. This is going to hurt her when it ends, you know. More than I thought." Jennifer had been trying not to think about that. "We have a year to prepare her, to help her understand. You can't prepare a kid for loss. Trust me, I tried when Sarah was dying. It doesn't work that way." The pain in his voice made Jennifer's chest ache. "I'm sorry about your wife. I know this can't be easy, getting married again so soon after. It's been 3 years. That's not that soon. Still." David was quiet for a moment. "Sarah would have liked you, actually. She had this thing about people being genuine. She could always tell when someone was putting on an act. And you, despite all the CEO armor and corporate speak, you're real. She would have appreciated that." It was possibly the nicest thing anyone had ever said to Jennifer, and she didn't know how to respond, so she just stood there feeling something warm and terrifying spread through her chest. The DJ announced it was time for the first dance, and David groaned. "I forgot about this part. You forgot about the first dance at your own wedding? I was hoping it would magically skip itself. Can you dance? Define dance." Jennifer set down her wine glass and extended her hand. "Come on, we'll survive 3 minutes." The song was something slow and classic, Frank Sinatra crooning about love and stars. And David was right. He wasn't a great dancer. But he was earnest about it, counting steps under his breath and trying hard not to step on her feet. It was endearing in a way that expensive dance lessons could never be. "You're doing fine. I'm butchering this song. Sinatra won't mind." They swayed together under the string lights, and Jennifer became acutely aware of how close they were. David's hand warm against her back through the thin fabric of her dress, the smell of his cologne mixing with something else, sawdust and soap and something uniquely him, the way he was looking at her like she was something precious instead of a business transaction. This was dangerous territory. They'd agreed to keep things professional, but professional didn't usually involve your heart racing when someone held you close. "Jennifer." David's voice was quiet. "Yeah? That kiss earlier. During the ceremony." Her breath caught. "What about it? That was just for show, right? For the guests." She should say yes. Should laugh it off and remind him this was all performance. Should rebuild the walls that were getting dangerously thin. But she couldn't make herself lie. "I don't know." David's hand tightened on her waist. "Yeah, me neither." They finished the dance in charged silence, both of them acutely aware that something fundamental had shifted between them. This wasn't supposed to happen. The contract had been clear: professional distance, separate lives, clean boundaries. But boundaries were harder to maintain when you were swaying in someone's arms under October stars, their daughter spinning nearby in a princess dress, and every single thing about the moment felt like something you wanted to keep forever. The song ended. They stepped apart. And Jennifer knew they were both in trouble. When the whole world says you don't belong, how do you decide what's real and worth fighting for? The rest of the reception passed in a blur of congratulations and cake and dancing. Emily eventually crashed around 9, falling asleep on a cushioned bench with frosting still on her face. David carried her to the car, and Jennifer found herself helping to buckle the sleeping child into her seat, their hands brushing in the dark. The wedding was over, the performance complete. But as Jennifer watched David's truck pull away toward Riverside while she climbed into the town car that would take her back to Manhattan, she felt something twist in her chest. They'd done it. Pulled off the wedding, satisfied the board, checked all the boxes. Everything was going according to plan. So why did it feel like she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life? The following Monday, reality crashed back with brutal efficiency. Jennifer walked into Clark Technologies to find Margaret Anderson waiting with 3 board members and a presentation deck titled Leadership Transition Planning. The CFO's smile was thin and satisfied. "We thought you should see this before the full board meeting Thursday." Margaret slid the deck across the conference table. "Just preliminary scenarios." Jennifer flipped through the slides. Each one outlined a different pathway for her removal as CEO. Voluntary resignation, medical leave, performance review triggering, vote of no confidence. Margaret had been busy during the wedding weekend. "These are interesting thought exercises." Jennifer kept her voice level. "What prompted this particular line of inquiry?" "The Robinson merger vote is Thursday." Margaret's tone was pleasant, almost sympathetic. "We want to ensure continuity regardless of outcome." "You mean you want to ensure your position to take over when the vote doesn't go my way?" "I mean we're being prudent." Jennifer left that meeting and went straight to her office, pulling up the board voting projections Angela had compiled last week. 6 solid votes for Jennifer, 4 against, 2 undecided, and one of those was her father, who'd been conspicuously silent since the wedding. Her phone buzzed. Text from David. "Emily asking when you're coming back. Told her you're working, but she wants to know if you're coming for dinner Thursday." Thursday was the vote, the day everything either solidified or fell apart. Jennifer typed back, "Tell her I'll be there. Promise." She stared at that last word for a long moment before hitting send. Promises to 6-year-olds weren't something you broke lightly. The week crawled forward with the weight of inevitability. Jennifer attended meetings, reviewed reports, maintained her professional facade, while Margaret circled like a shark that smelled blood in the water. Thomas Moore showed up twice with legal documents that needed her signature, his expression carefully neutral but his eyes calculating. Wednesday night, Jennifer was in her penthouse going through merger documents when her phone rang. "Michael Harris, David's brother. We need to talk." Michael's voice was tight. "About my brother and what you're doing to him." "I'm not doing anything to him. We have an arrangement. You have a contract." Michael cut her off. "I read it. David showed me. Very thorough, very professional. Except my brother is falling for you and you're going to break his heart in 9 months when this expires. That's not—" "Don't." Michael's voice was hard now. "I've known David his entire life. I saw how Sarah's death destroyed him. Took him 2 years to even smile again. Now he's got Emily asking if you're going to be her real mom and him looking at you like you're the answer to prayers he was afraid to pray. So I'm asking you straight, when this year is up, what happens?" Jennifer's throat tightened. "We end it cleanly. That was the agreement. Cleanly." Michael laughed without humor. "There's nothing clean about what you're setting up. Emily's 7 years old and she's already attached. David's texting you every day. You're coming to dinner on Thursdays like some kind of family tradition. This isn't staying professional, Jennifer. This is real life sneaking in around the edges of your contract. What do you want me to do? I want you to decide. Either you're in this for real or you're not. Because if you're not, you need to start pulling back now before Emily gets hurt worse." Michael hung up before Jennifer could respond. She sat in her penthouse surrounded by 16 rooms of expensive emptiness and thought about Thursday, the vote that would determine if she kept her company, the dinner with David and Emily that she'd promised to attend. The impossible choice she was pretending didn't exist. Thursday morning, Jennifer woke at 5, couldn't eat breakfast, and arrived at Clark Technologies by 7. The board meeting was scheduled for 2. She had 7 hours to wait. At 9, her father walked into her office without knocking. "We need to discuss your marriage." Jennifer looked up from her laptop. "Nothing to discuss. I'm married. You got what you wanted." "What I wanted was strategic positioning, not whatever this is." Robert gestured vaguely at Jennifer's desk where her phone sat with a text from Emily visible on the screen. "Daddy says you're coming today? I'm making spaghetti?" That's a 7-year-old excited about dinner. That's my daughter getting attached to people who are going to disappear in 9 months. Robert's voice was quieter than she expected. "I know about the contract, Jennifer. Thomas showed me." Jennifer's blood went cold. "Thomas More had no business. He's corporate counsel. When I asked him to vet your marriage for legal vulnerabilities, he did his job." Robert sat down heavily in the chair across from her desk. 1 year. Clean divorce. Financial arrangements for the child's medical care. Very tidy. If you're here to gloat, I'm here to warn you. Robert's tone was strange, almost gentle. "I've made a lot of mistakes with you, Jennifer. Pushed you too hard, demanded too much. But I know what it looks like when someone is lying to themselves. You're falling for him. That's not—" "You are. And when this year is up, you're going to have to choose between that contract and whatever this is becoming." Robert leaned forward. "I chose the company over your mother. Every single time. And I've spent 24 years regretting it. So I'm asking you, what are you going to choose?" Jennifer stared at her father. In 32 years, he'd never once admitted regret about anything. "The vote is in 5 hours." Her voice was steadier than she felt. "Shouldn't you be deciding how you're voting instead of analyzing my personal life?" "I already decided." Robert stood. "I'm voting for you. The company needs you more than it needs my pride. But Jennifer, the company isn't worth what you're about to lose if you're not careful." He left before she could respond. The board meeting started at 2 o'clock exactly. 12 members around the table, Jennifer at the head, Margaret Anderson presenting the Robinson Defense merger for final vote. The presentation was thorough, professional, highlighting projected revenue growth and strategic positioning. Everything Jennifer had worked toward for 18 months. When Margaret finished, James Robinson himself appeared via video conference from his office in Washington. "I've reviewed the terms." Robinson's voice was gravelly with age but sharp with intelligence. "The merger benefits both companies substantially. But I have one concern before I finalize my approval." The room went still. "Ms. Clark, I understand you recently married." Robinson's face on the screen was unreadable. "Under somewhat unusual circumstances." Jennifer felt Margaret's satisfaction radiating from across the table. Here it came. The reveal. The scandal that would tank everything. "I did." Jennifer kept her voice level. "My personal life is my own business. Normally I'd agree, but I make it a point to know who I'm partnering with. So I had my people look into your husband." Jennifer's hands clenched under the table. "David didn't deserve to have his life picked apart by corporate investigators. David Harris, carpenter, widower, single father." Robinson continued. "Raising a daughter with significant medical needs on a small business income. Then you come along and not only marry him but restructure your work schedule to spend time in Riverside. The board here tells me you're taking Thursdays off now." Margaret leaned forward slightly, smelling blood. "That's correct." Jennifer met Robinson's eyes through the screen. "My husband and his daughter are important to me. I'm making time for them. At the expense of the company, at the expense of 18-hour workdays that were burning me out." Jennifer felt something shift inside her, clarity cutting through the corporate doublespeak. "I'm a better CEO when I remember there's life outside these walls. David taught me that." Robinson was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled. "Good. That's exactly what I needed to hear." The room seemed to exhale collectively. "My wife died 10 years ago." Robinson's voice softened. "I spent our whole marriage prioritizing business over her. Missed anniversaries, birthdays, every damn thing that mattered. And when she was gone, I realized I'd traded decades of partnership for money I didn't need." He leaned closer to his camera. "Ms. Clark, I'm approving this merger because you're brilliant at what you do. But I'm also approving it because you just proved you understand something most CEOs never learn. Success means nothing if you achieve it alone." The vote was unanimous, 12-0. Jennifer kept her CEO position. The merger moved forward. Clark Technologies was now positioned to dominate the cybersecurity market for the next decade. Margaret Anderson walked out of that boardroom looking like she'd swallowed glass. Jennifer sat in her office afterward, staring at her phone. It was 3:30. She was supposed to be in Riverside by 6 for Emily's spaghetti dinner. Her father appeared in the doorway. "Congratulations." "Thank you." Robert hesitated, something uncertain in his expression. "For what it's worth, I think you made the right choice. With David, I mean." Jennifer looked at him. "You voted for me." "I did. And I'm going to try something I've never been good at." Robert's voice was rough. "I'm going to support you, in whatever you decide, even if it's not what I would choose." It was the closest thing to an apology Jennifer had ever gotten from her father, and she didn't know what to do with it. "Go." Robert gestured toward the door. "You promised a 7-year-old spaghetti. Don't make my granddaughter wait." Jennifer arrived in Riverside at 5:53. Still in her suit, but with her hair down and her heels traded for flats she kept in the car. The workshop was quiet, but lights glowed from the apartment windows above. She climbed the stairs and knocked. Emily yanked the door open before the second knock, face bright with excitement. "You came. Daddy said you might be too busy, but you came. I promised, didn't I?" Emily grabbed her hand and pulled her inside. The apartment smelled like tomato sauce and garlic bread. David stood at the stove stirring a pot, flour on his shirt and a dish towel over his shoulder. He looked up when Jennifer entered, and his smile was genuine, unguarded in a way she rarely saw. "How'd it go?" "We won. Unanimous vote. That's amazing. Congratulations. Thank you." They stood there looking at each other while Emily bounced between them, chattering about her day at school and how she'd helped make the sauce. And wasn't it the best sauce ever, even though she'd spilled some on the floor, but Daddy said it was okay because accidents happen. Dinner was chaotic and perfect. The spaghetti was slightly overcooked and Emily had put in too much garlic, but nobody cared. They ate at the small kitchen table with Emily narrating every bite and David interjecting occasional corrections to her increasingly elaborate stories about school. After dinner, Emily begged to show Jennifer her room and the collection of drawings she'd been working on. The walls were covered with crayon art, rainbows and horses, and stick figure families. Emily pointed to the newest one. "That's you and me and Daddy. We're at the beach. Have you ever been to the beach? Can we go to the beach? Daddy says maybe this summer if we have money, but now we have money because you helped with my heart, so can we go?" Jennifer's throat tightened. "Maybe we can." "Really?" Emily's eyes went wide. "All three of us?" "All three of us." When Emily finally wound down enough for bed, David did the bedtime routine. Pajamas, teeth brushing, story time. Jennifer sat in the living room listening to David's voice, reading something about a dragon and a princess, and felt herself relaxing in a way she never did in her Manhattan penthouse. David emerged 20 minutes later, easing Emily's door shut behind him. "She's out. Probably dreaming about beaches." He sat on the couch next to Jennifer, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "Michael called me." David's voice was quiet. "Said he talked to you last night." "He did. He's worried I'm getting in too deep." "Are you?" David turned to look at her, and Jennifer saw everything he wasn't saying written in his expression. "Yeah, I think I am." Jennifer's heart hammered. "David, we have a contract. 9 months left. We agreed." "I know what we agreed." His hand found hers on the couch between them. "I'm just telling you where I'm at. You can do whatever you want with that information." "What do you want me to do with it?" "I want you to be honest." David's thumb brushed across her knuckles. "Are you feeling this too, or am I alone in it?" Jennifer thought about the last 6 weeks, the Thursday dinners that had become routine, the texts throughout the week about nothing important, the way her chest felt lighter when she left Manhattan and heavier when she returned. The fact that she'd rearranged her entire work schedule around a 7-year-old's spaghetti dinners and didn't regret it for a second. "You're not alone in it." David exhaled like he'd been holding his breath. "Okay, so what do we do?" "I don't know." Jennifer felt panic rising. "We have a contract. Terms. An exit date. I can't just—" "Why not?" Because I don't know how to do this. Her voice cracked. I don't know how to be in a relationship that isn't transactional. I don't know how to be a mother to Emily when I don't know what mothers are supposed to do. I don't know how to walk away from everything I built in Manhattan to— Who said anything about walking away? David shifted to face her fully. Jennifer, I'm not asking you to give up your company. I'm asking if maybe we can figure out how to make this work for real instead of pretending it's temporary. For real means what? We stay married after the year is up? It means we stop treating this like it has an expiration date and start treating it like something we want to keep. Jennifer's phone buzzed. Text from Margaret Anderson. Congrats on the vote. See you Monday for transition planning. Transition planning. Margaret wasn't done. She'd just been temporarily derailed. I have enemies at work who are waiting for me to slip. Jennifer stared at her phone. If they find out this marriage started as a contract, they'll use it to destroy me. Then we don't tell them. David's voice was steady. The contract was the beginning. What we do from here is up to us. And Emily? What happens when she finds out the truth? We tell her the truth. That we started as an agreement to help each other and turned into something real. Kids understand that. Hell, Emily already thinks this is a fairy tale. We just have to make sure the ending matches. Jennifer wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe they could take something that started as a business transaction and turn it into an actual marriage. But she'd spent 32 years in a world where everything had a price and nothing was what it seemed. I need time to think about this. Take all the time you need. David stood, pulling her up with him. But Jennifer? While you're thinking, remember this. I'm not asking you to choose between me and your company. I'm asking you to believe you can have both. He walked her to the door. Before she left, he kissed her forehead, gentle and brief and full of promise. Drive safe. Jennifer drove back to Manhattan with David's words echoing in her head and her phone lighting up with work emails she didn't want to read. The next week passed in a strange duality. In Manhattan, Jennifer was CEO again, attending meetings and reviewing merger documents and maintaining her professional mask. Margaret circled with renewed caution, clearly regrouping after the vote. Thomas Moore appeared in her office Wednesday with a friendly warning that the board was watching her work-life balance carefully. But Thursdays, Jennifer drove to Riverside and had dinner with David and Emily. And slowly, without discussing it explicitly, the boundaries they'd carefully maintained started to blur. Friday evening, David called. Emily's school is doing a fall festival next weekend. She wants to know if you'll come. What time? 2:00 Saturday. There's going to be a costume parade and she's being a dragon. Fair warning, she's very committed to this dragon thing. I'll be there. Saturday. Jennifer showed up in jeans and a sweater instead of her usual designer armor. Emily was indeed very committed to being a dragon, complete with homemade wings and a tail that kept knocking things over. The festival was pure small-town Americana, hay bales and pumpkins and parents with cameras. Jennifer stood next to David watching Emily parade around the school playground in her dragon costume, roaring at other children who squealed with delight. She's fierce. Jennifer couldn't help smiling. Gets it from her mother. David's voice was soft. Sarah was like that. Never backed down from anything. It was the first time he'd volunteered information about his late wife, and Jennifer didn't know how to respond. You must miss her. Every day. David was quiet for a moment. But I'm learning there's room for both. Missing what I had and being grateful for what I found. Before Jennifer could process that, Emily spotted them and came running over, wings flapping. Did you see me? Did you see how scary I was? Terrifying. Jennifer crouched to Emily's level. Best dragon I've ever seen. Because I'm the best at everything, Emily announced with absolute confidence. Right, Daddy? Right, kiddo. Can Jennifer come trick-or-treating with us? Emily turned those enormous green eyes on Jennifer. Please? We're doing the whole neighborhood and Daddy always gets tired, but if you come, he can't quit early. Emily, I'd love to. The words came out before Jennifer could think about whether she should commit to Halloween in Riverside when she had a board dinner in Manhattan that same night. I'll move some things around. Really? Emily threw her arms around Jennifer's neck. You're the best mom ever. Jennifer's breath caught. Emily had called her mom. Not Jennifer, not Miss Clark, but Mom. She met David's eyes over Emily's head and saw her own panic reflected there. Later, after Emily ran off to show her dragon costume to her friend Maya, David spoke quietly. "She's been calling you that all week. I've been correcting her, but she keeps forgetting. Or not forgetting." Jennifer watched Emily breathing fire at an imaginary enemy. "David, what are we doing? We're halfway through this contract and we're playing house like it's real." "Maybe that's because it is real." David turned to face her. "Jennifer, I know you're scared. I'm scared too. But being scared doesn't make this any less worth fighting for." "Fighting how? Against what?" "Against the part of you that thinks everything good has to be temporary." Jennifer opened her mouth to argue, but Emily came running back with Maya in tow, both of them demanding Jennifer judge their roaring contest, and the moment passed. But David's words stuck with her through the weekend and into the following week. Tuesday morning, Jennifer was in her office when her assistant buzzed. "Your father is here. He doesn't have an appointment, but—" "Send him in." Robert entered, looking older than Jennifer remembered, like the vote had taken something out of him he couldn't get back. "I'm moving to advisory role." He sat down without preamble. "Effective end of quarter. The board approved it yesterday." Jennifer stared. "You're stepping down?" "I'm 70 next year. It's time." Robert's voice was matter-of-fact, but something underneath suggested this wasn't entirely his choice. "And I'm tired of fighting battles I've already won." "Who pushed you out?" "Margaret?" "No one pushed. I chose." Robert met her eyes. "Because I looked at you at that wedding and I saw your mother. The way she looked at me before I killed it with work and ambition and the need to always be right. And I realized I was about to watch you make the same mistake. I'm not—" "You are. You're so busy protecting yourself from getting hurt that you're going to throw away something real." Robert leaned forward. "That carpenter loves you. Actually loves you, not what you can do for him. When's the last time anyone loved you for just being you?" Jennifer's throat tightened. "That's not fair, isn't it? Name one person in your life who wouldn't drop you if you lost this company tomorrow." She couldn't. David would still be there. Robert's voice was gentle now. "And that little girl calls you Mom. So I'm asking you the same thing. I asked myself 30 years too late. Is this company worth what you're going to lose if you keep treating it like the only thing that matters?" After her father left, Jennifer sat in her office, surrounded by the trappings of success she'd spent 18 years building, and felt emptier than she had in months. Her phone buzzed. Text from Emily's school. "Emily Harris had incident at school today. Father notified. Non-emergency, but please call office." Jennifer called David immediately. "What happened? Is she okay?" "She's fine." David's voice was tight. "She got into a fight with another kid who said you weren't her real mom. Pushed him off the playground equipment. He's got a scraped knee and Emily's suspended for the rest of the day." "Is she hurt?" "No. But Jennifer, she's crying and saying she's sorry and asking if you're going to leave because she was bad." "I'm coming." "You don't have to." "I'm coming." Jennifer walked out of Clark Technologies at noon, canceled 3 meetings, and drove to Riverside faster than was probably legal. She found David and Emily in the principal's office, Emily red-eyed and hiccuping while David held her hand and looked exhausted. Jennifer crouched in front of Emily's chair. "Hey, Dragon Girl." Emily launched herself at Jennifer, wrapping arms around her neck. I'm sorry I was bad. Please don't leave." "Shh." Jennifer held her tight. "I'm not leaving. I'm right here. But Jake said you're not my real mom because you didn't birth me, and I got mad and pushed him, and now I'm in trouble." Jennifer pulled back to look at Emily's tear-stained face. "Listen to me. Being a mom has nothing to do with birth. It's about showing up and caring and being there when it matters. And I'm here, aren't I?" Emily nodded, chin wobbling. "So you're stuck with me." Jennifer brushed tears off Emily's cheeks. "Even when you make mistakes. Even when you push kids off playground equipment, which we're going to talk about later because that's not okay. I'm still here. Forever?" The word hung in the air like a challenge. Jennifer looked at David, who was watching them with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Forever." The principal cleared her throat. "Well, I think we can consider this matter resolved. Emily, you're suspended for the rest of today, but you can come back tomorrow. And maybe we work on using words instead of pushing, yes? Emily nodded, still clinging to Jennifer. They walked out of the school together, Emily between them holding both their hands. When they reached the parking lot, Emily looked up at Jennifer. Are you staying for dinner? It's Tuesday, but you could stay anyway. Jennifer thought about the meetings she'd canceled, the work piling up. Margaret probably already plotting how to use this absence against her. I'm staying. That night after Emily was in bed, David made tea, and they sat on the couch in the quiet apartment. Thank you for coming today. Of course I came. Not of course. David's voice was soft. You had work. You came anyway. For Emily. For us. Jennifer stared into her tea. I canceled 3 meetings. Margaret's probably writing her transition plan right now. Let her write it. David shifted closer. Jennifer, you proved something today. Not to the board or your father or me. To yourself. You chose us when it mattered. For one afternoon. Start with one afternoon. Then another. Then enough afternoons that it becomes a life. David took her hand. I'm not asking you to quit your job. I'm asking you to stop treating us like we're optional. You're not optional. Then prove it. Marry me again. For real this time. Jennifer's breath caught. We're already married. We're already legally married, David corrected. I'm asking you to choose this. Choose us. Not because of a contract or your father's ultimatum or Emily's surgery, because you want to. Jennifer looked at him. This man who'd taken a ridiculous offer from a desperate stranger and turned it into something neither of them had planned for, who loved his daughter with a fierceness that left no room for doubt, who looked at Jennifer like she was worth choosing even when she didn't know how to choose herself. Okay, I choose this. I choose us. Jennifer felt something break open in her chest, terrifying and liberating at once. I don't know how to make it work with the company and Thursday dinners and board meetings and Halloween costumes, but I want to try. David pulled her close and kissed her. Not the performative wedding kiss, but something real and deep and full of promise. We'll figure it out, one day at a time. 6 months later, Jennifer stood in the Riverside High School gym watching Emily perform in the spring talent show. She'd driven up from Manhattan Thursday evening like she did every week now, her schedule restructured around a 7-year-old's life in ways that would have been unthinkable a year ago. Emily was singing something from Frozen, slightly off-key but with complete commitment. David sat next to Jennifer recording on his phone, and when Emily hit the high note, mostly, he squeezed Jennifer's hand. She's amazing. She really is. After the show, they took Emily for ice cream at the diner where everyone knew David by name and had gotten used to seeing Jennifer there. Mrs. Patterson stopped by their table. Heard you close that big merger. Mrs. Patterson had opinions about everything and shared them freely. Good for you. But more importantly, are you coming to Emily's birthday party next month? Wouldn't miss it. Good. Because this one here, Mrs. Patterson patted Emily's head, has been telling everyone her mom is a CEO. Very proud of you. Jennifer's chest warmed. I'm pretty proud of her too. Later, after Emily was asleep, David and Jennifer sat on the porch in the spring air. Emily's birthday party invitation list spread between them. She wants to invite 20 kids. David shook his head. Where are we going to fit 20 kids? We'll figure it out. Jennifer was already mentally calculating logistics. We could rent that pavilion by the lake, get a bouncy castle. Emily mentioned wanting a dragon cake. You're planning an elaborate 7-year-old birthday party. I am. A year ago, you didn't know how to braid hair. I learned. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that came from hundreds of conversations and thousands of small moments building into something solid. The contract expires in 3 weeks. David said it quietly. Angela sent the dissolution papers to sign. Jennifer had been thinking about that, the 1-year mark, the expiration date that had seemed so clear and simple when they'd started. Don't sign them. I wasn't planning to. David turned to look at her. Were you? No. Jennifer met his eyes. I want to stay married to you. Actually married, not contract married. If that's still what you want. It's what I've wanted since about month 2. Why didn't you say something? Because you needed to figure out what you wanted without me pushing. David pulled her close. You spent 32 years with people telling you what to do. I wanted you to choose this because you couldn't imagine anything else. Jennifer thought about the woman she'd been a year ago. Desperate, cornered, willing to buy a husband to keep a company she thought was all she had. And she thought about the woman she was now. Still CEO, but with Thursday dinners and Saturday festivals, and a 7-year-old who called her mom and meant it. Best deal I ever made. Her voice was soft. Yeah? Yeah. They sat on that porch in Riverside while Manhattan glittered somewhere in the distance, close enough to reach in 2 hours but far enough away that it didn't define everything anymore. Jennifer still ran Clark Technologies, still attended board meetings and closed deals, and proved herself in rooms full of skeptics. But now she also packed lunches and braided hair and showed up to talent shows. And she'd learned something her father never had. Success means nothing if you achieve it alone. It makes you wonder how many times we judge people by appearances instead of character, how many times we let fear of getting hurt stop us from taking chances on something real. Emily came out of the house rubbing sleep from her eyes. Bad dream? Yeah. Can I sit with you guys? Always. Emily squeezed between them on the porch swing, her head on Jennifer's shoulder and her feet in David's lap. Within minutes she was asleep again, the nightmare already forgotten. David looked at Jennifer over their daughter's head, because Emily was their daughter now, in every way that mattered. Your father called yesterday, said he wants to take Emily to the Natural History Museum next week. Robert Clark taking a 7-year-old to a museum. Jennifer shook her head. Never thought I'd see the day. People change. Yeah. Jennifer stroked Emily's hair gently. They do. The night air was cool and perfect. Inside the house, a clock ticked. Somewhere in Manhattan, her penthouse sat mostly empty, used just 3 nights a week now. At Clark Technologies, Margaret Anderson was probably plotting her next move, and the board was watching Jennifer's unorthodox schedule with varying degrees of approval. But here on this porch with David and Emily, Jennifer finally understood what her father had tried to warn her about. The company could be rebuilt if it fell. Mergers could be renegotiated. Board seats could be won and lost. But this small life she'd built in the margins of a contract that was supposed to be temporary, this was irreplaceable. Ever been underestimated because of where you came from or what you looked like and proved them wrong? Drop your story in the comments. And if David and Jennifer's journey inspired you, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes the deals we make out of desperation become the greatest gifts of our lives. 5 life lessons stood out in the end. Real strength is accepting help without losing dignity. David negotiated as an equal, never a victim. The best partnerships are mutual respect, not rescue. Jennifer didn't save David, and he didn't save her. They built something together. Your children are watching how you handle adversity. Emily learned grace under pressure from both of them. Success means nothing if achieved alone. The company Jennifer kept meant less than the family she gained. And maybe most importantly, define yourself before the world defines you. David refused to shrink, and Jennifer learned to stop apologizing for wanting more than one kind of life. A year ago, Jennifer Clark would have paid any price to keep her company. She ended up paying exactly the price required, 1 year of pretending, and got so much more than what she'd bargained for. David Harris walked into a deal that should have been simple and found himself building something that would last long after the contract expired. And Emily got healthy and strong and grew up knowing that family isn't about how it starts, but about who shows up when it matters. The contract papers sat unsigned on Angela's desk for another week before Jennifer finally called. Destroy them. We don't need them anymore. You're sure? Jennifer looked at David across the kitchen table where they were helping Emily with homework while dinner simmered on the stove. Yeah, I'm sure. Some deals are made to end, and some are made to transform into something neither party could have imagined at the beginning. The trick is knowing which is which before you sign your name. Jennifer Clark learned that lesson the hard way, but she learned it, and in the end, that made all the difference.